Hello everyone, welcome to Dentistionary. Today we are going to continue with nerve muscle physiology, and our topic for today is physiological properties and classification of nerve fibers. Let me remind you guys, you can ask your queries and any doubts in our description box, and for the notes we are going to provide you the entire PPT so that it will be easier for you guys too. Coming back to our topic, the physiological properties of nerve fibers. Mostly it is asked along with some other questions like explain NMG and write the physiological properties of the nerve fibers. So that means it basically comes in short answer types. So what are the physiological properties? They include the excitability, all or none law, refractory period, and conductivity. So what is excitability? Excitability is the property of the nerve fiber by virtue of which several cells respond to the change in the external or internal environments. So that means basically it is the type of response that the cells give to the external and internal environmental changes. It is due to the disturbances in the ionic equilibrium across the receptive zone of cell membrane. Next comes the all or none law. The action potential in a single nerve fiber is all or none in character. That is, when a stimulus is applied, either the axon does not respond with a spike production or it responds to the maximum of its ability. That means, अगर किसी एक्सॉन को स्टिमुलस प्रोवाइड किया जाएगा तो आइदर इट विल नॉट गिव एनी रिस्पॉन्स, कोई रिस्पॉन्स नहीं मिलेगा, या फिर इट विल गिव इट्स मैक्सिमम रिस्पॉन्स, मतलब जितना उसकी एबिलिटी होगी फुल मैक्सिमम रिस्पॉन्स वो प्रोवाइड करेगा, आइदर कंप्लीट प्रोवाइड करेगा या फिर no response will be given by the axon. This is called all or none law. Next comes the refractory period. Refractory period is basically the time gap between two successive stimulus. Like if two successive stimuli of more than the threshold intensity is applied to a nerve, the nerve is unable to respond to the second stimulus for quite some time. That is, the nerve has become refractory to their subsequent stimulation. So the length of time it remains refractory to the second stimulus is called the refractory period. Next comes the conductivity. What is conductivity? The nerve impulses is conducted along the nerve fibers, that is spread of wave of depolarization. It is an inactive self-propagating process and the impulse moves along the nerve at a constant amplitude. Hope so the physiological properties are clear to you. Next comes the classification. There are different types of classification, but the most important one is Erlanger and Gazer's classification, which is usually asked in our terminals and sometimes in profs too. That's why I provided you the Erlanger and Gazer classification chart, which is being extracted from the A.K. Jain Human Physiology book. Go through this chart, it's very important. Next we have the compound action potential. It simply idealizes the summation of almost all the action potentials from several nerve fibers, or I would say the muscle fibers, in the same area. So what is compound action potential? It is an extracellular recording of action potential. Simple. By whom? By the injury the part of a nerve and placing one of the external recording electrode on it. So what is the main role of compound action potential? Why it is being done? It is widely used to study the functional conduction of a nerve. If it is asked in your questions, write a short note on compound action potential. First you provide the description, or I would say the definition of compound action potential. Then write what are the factors which affect the compound action potential, and lastly draw the graph of it, which I'll show you in the next slide. So what are the factors affecting compound action potential? There are basically two main factors which affect the compound action potential. They are the types of the fibers used and the strength of the stimulus. When it comes to the strength of the stimulus, the shape of the compound action potential, that means the graph, is basically depending upon the number and the type of fibers stimulated by a given strength of stimulus. Next are the type of fibers. None of the peripheral nerves show all the components because none contains all type of fibers. Therefore, the number and size of the peaks vary with the types of the fibers in the particular nerve being studied. So, all the nerve fibers components are present in none of the nerves. So basically क्या होता है? The number and size of the peaks vary with the type of the fibers present. So this is the graph that I was mentioning. It's very important. A alpha, A beta, A gamma are the classification of nerve fibers mentioned in Erlanger and Gezer classification chart. जब आप वो चार्ट पढ़ोगे आपको ये ग्राफ क्लियरली समझ में आएगा. Last topic is the difference between the action and graded potential. See guys, I am providing you the important difference between at the end of every slide so that it will be easier for you to note it which are the important differentiations. Like the action and graded potential difference has been asked several times in our profs. What is graded and action potential? Graded potential, it is confined to relatively small region of the membrane and is non-propagating in nature. Whereas the action potential, it spread over the membrane covering relatively a much larger area. It was related to a smaller area, it is relating to a larger area and it is propagating in nature. Next we can see graded potential does not follow all or none law, whereas the action potential follow all or none law. It has no threshold. The graded potential has no threshold, whereas the action potential has threshold. Graded potential shows no refractory period and is for short distance signal transmission, whereas the action potential has a refractory period and shows long distance signal transmission. So this was a short PPT guys. Thank you so much. Our next slide will be on NMJ, that is the neuromuscular junction, which is the most important long answer question asked in your terminals and profs. Thank you so much guys. Hope you have understood today's lecture. Keep supporting and keep sharing our channel. Thank you.